Meg?
Okay, hi everybody, and thank you so much for having the best microfiction gang into the F-Bomb reading series, Paul. It's really lovely of you, and it's been really wonderful to edit such a cool and vibrant anthology series. It's hard to believe that we're going into our 5th year, but we are. And I wanted to say thank you to Gary Fink, my excellent co-editor, and to Pelicanesis Press, our publishing home, and to the wonderful Mark Givens, our publisher, for his great and supportive series and innovative book design, innovative book cover art by his dad, Terry Givens, which I just love. And I'm very proud of this book, and I just love carrying it around in my pocket. I think it's like the perfect size of book to carry great microfiction around in. And anyway, I just wanted to say hello to our wonderful writers. And there were only a handful, unfortunately, that we could, fit in. And unfortunately, only 6 showed up. For some reason, we thought there'd be 10 of you, but hey, that gives some time for other wonderful writers that are here as well. So anyway, just wanted to say congratulations again to everybody. And Paul, did you want me to actually read one of my micros to start? It's not from the book, but did you want me just to read?
Yes.
Okay, so Paul asked me to read one of my recent microfictions. So I thought I'd read one called If You Want to Be Loved, Love from Cleaver Magazine. If you want to be loved, love. If you want to be a horse, be a horse. Her father said this when he talked about the family infrastructure, how weak it was. When she was little, she wanted to become strong as a horse to make him happy. So she tried to become one, but it never worked. 2, later, there was the shock of loving a man with the soul of a tree. She had always wanted to be a bird, at least in her dreams. But when she was with this man, she didn't want to be anything. She only wanted to fly to him. 3, the doctor told her that if she wanted to be loved, next time she needed to love. She didn't understand what he meant, so she stared into his eyes. They looked like the eyes of a sad old horse, a horse that knew it was going to become glue for some child's special art project. This was the day she fell in love with her doctor. 4, if you want to be a horse, she said to her son when he tried on his Halloween costume and stared in the mirror as if he had failed. How can I be a horse, the child said. Stand there like this, she said, as if you were stuck in the middle of a field, but it doesn't worry you. 5, when her father walked into the ocean, her mother started painting birds. It felt like a dream, her mother waving a paintbrush at 6 a.m., blackbirds and sparrows all over the kitchen walls, and her mother up early enough to catch a worm. She said, your father never believed we were strong enough. Can you imagine how much he would have hated these birds? 6, when she became an artist like her mother, she gave up the idea of being okay. She stood like a not-stuck horse in her kitchen and remembered her mother surrounded by birds. Her son, who had been a successful horse on Halloween, watched her with love in his unknowable eyes. So that's it. Thanks.
Great way to start us off, Meg. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Frankie's not here. And our next reader is Sudha Balagapal. She's honored to have her writing in many fine journals, including Monkey Bicycle, Craft, Split Lip, and Smoke Long Quarterly. Her novella in Flash, Things I Can't Tell Amma, was published by Ad Hoc Fiction in 2021. She has stories in both Best Microfiction and Best Small Fictions, 2022. Good year.
Yeah.
Sudha.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. And thank you, Meg, for selecting my story. I appreciate it so much. I'm so excited to have this book and to have my story in it. So this one was in Monkey Bicycle, and it's called Bitter Hot Chocolate. The doctor laughs when my 10-year-old says her throat is too narrow to swallow the chunky pill for her ear infection. But I convince him her gullet tightens around the tablet until she cannot breathe. So he asks her to open wide, shines a flashlight, then says there's nothing physically wrong. Plenty of room for the antibiotic to slide down. But once home, she makes gagging sounds, wraps fingers around her neck, and turns beet red when she must take her medicine. So I'm forced to call the physician, who chuckles, and says I should stir the pill into hot chocolate, at which I gasp, and he says he's not joking. So I buy the fanciest Swiss package, dissolve the medicine into the beverage, and my daughter swallows the frothiness, licks the mustache off her upper lip, and remarks that the creamy chocolate is bitter but tasty, to which I respond, that's chocolate for you. And because she grins after the course of antibiotics ends, I add to her Minnie Mouse mug multivitamins, cough medicine, even antidiarrheals on occasion. So she believes this is good chocolate, the drink everyone loves despite the taste. And I tell her it's sort of how beer is popular, how people love it. And I shouldn't have used that particular comparison because too soon, at 16, she begins to relish beer. And before I absorb the beer situation, she gets attached to this guy who has a pungent temper and a delicious smile, a wild man who cannot be tamed, a creature all her friends adore. And she swallows his temper, his hot words, his beatings, his cheatings, but won't let go of him, even when I say she should, even after I introduce her to an upright young man who, on their first date, places a cup of unadulterated hot chocolate before her. But she accuses him of doctoring the beverage, screaming that it tastes all wrong before she goes back to find that fellow with the pungent temper. So I call the doctor and tell him he should never again recommend mixing medicine into a beverage. And he responds, no laugh, there are reflexive actions involved in swallowing. Fixing those is beyond his medical expertise.
Thank you, Sue. Sarah Fraley is up next. And Sarah's the author of 4 books, including Sad Math, winner of the 2014 Moon City Press Poetry Prize, and the 2015 Whirling Prize from the University of Indianapolis. And We, published by Harper Editions in early 2021. Recent work has appeared in the Cincinnati Review, Micro Series, Smoke Lung Quarterly, Wigleaf, Fractured Lit, and in the anthologies, New Micro, Exceptionally Short Fiction, Norton, 2018. Best Microfiction, 2019 to 22, and Best Small Fiction, 2022. Among her awards are poetry fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Saltonstall Foundation. That's longer than most of my stories, Sarah. And you're up.
I have a shorter version too. I could have sent you. Thank you so much, Paul and Meg, for having this. Meg, thank you for accepting this. I have to tell you that the best micro selections are usually announced on the coldest day in January. I live in Western New York, right by Lake Ontario, and it gets very, very cold in January. And usually that's the day that the best microfiction selections come out, and it is thrilling and it warms the day up a lot. So thank you very much. I'm going to read Rise. This one was in Tramset, and it's my first foray into dystopian fiction. I'm usually a realist, but I decided to break out of that. Anyways, this has a lot of white space around it, so I pause after each kind of segment. Rise. Weeks after the water rose, objects floated up from the drowned city below us. A baby shoe, a Starbucks mug, a red plaid dog collar tufted with wet fur. Once there were 11 of us. Once there were fish and berries. The water rose and rose. We used to see boats in the distance. Now we crowd together, ration what we eat. We dream of food hot from the oven, but wake to a cold smear of sun. Books float up, beach themselves as if delivered, a manual on car repair, and a mystery missing the last 20 pages. We spend a week arguing about the end. He did it. No, she did. We vote when the moon is full. In summer, the moon is a ripe peach. Winter, a plate cold from the refrigerator. We practice swimming every day, an hour in the morning and again before sunset. On clear days, we can see the buildings of the city below us, the spire of a church, the metal dome of what used to be the library. Trucks used to deliver books. Their drivers parked in the middle of the street, flashers on, and carried boxes into the house. We stayed home for a year, and the trucks brought us everything we needed. The sun rises and falls. We quit counting long ago. A strawberry moon, a red smear on the horizon that rises juicy, something to pull down and eat whole. Kate today. Kate draws the short stick. The sun rises and falls. The water rises and rises. Kate cries as she gives us what she took from before, a teething ring, a lock of hair, a silver thimble. Once there was land. Once there was a beach where we spread towels and cooked food over fires and tossed frisbees to dogs that nipped them from the air. The beach was sand and soft. We stood on the beach at the end of the day and applauded the sun setting over the water, and then we drove home. We hug Kate and say, swim hard, you're strong, find help, what we always say. The dogs got old and died. We buried them with their frisbees. Home is a hill. There are 3 of us. The water is rising. Thank you.
Is there time for Sarah to read the other story? Or, I mean, I think because Sarah, because we just don't, everyone didn't show up. So that would be great.
I had it scheduled for 2 anyway. Sarah, that's Your Life is a Bottle.
Oh, Sarah's on mute. Sarah's on mute.
Okay, here I am. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Right. Your Life is a Bottle from Pithead Chapel. Thanks to them for accepting this. Closing time, you hang out with the dishwater washers who keep a bottle tucked behind the toilet tank in the employee's restroom, something rot gut and low down that tastes of Lysol and piss. A shot or 2 does the trick, makes it so you don't hate the cute girls with good teeth and cleavage, delivering last call martinis to rich guys while you're stuck in the kitchen refilling condiments. You're superstitious enough to pinch salt over your shoulder whenever you spill it, fool enough to whisper a wish. You marry your ketchups in a little ceremony. Who takes this woman? Though it's less a commitment and more like pickup sex, random bottles tipped together, lip to lip, each bleeding quick and urgent into the other, while their caps stew clean and scalding. Later, you'll head to a bar while you drink yourself pretty under the black light of the dance floor. Later, you'll find someone to tip yourself into and anybody who will empty you out and leave you clean. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, first in order here is Paul Beckman. Karen, are you there?
I'm here. Just pulling it up somehow. Okay.
Okay.
Paul Beckman's Flash Collection, Kiss Kiss, from Truth Serum Press, was a finalist for the 2019 Indie Short Story Award competition. Paul was nominated by Citron Review for Best Microfiction 2020 and had a micro story selected for the 2018 Norton Anthology New Micro Exceptionally Short Fiction. He was one of the winners in this 2016 The Best Small Fictions, and his story, Mum's Goodbye, was chosen as the winner of the 2016 Fiction Southeast Editors Prize. And he was one of the winners in the 2022 Microfiction Anthology. He's been published in the following magazines, among others: Litro, Playboy, Pank, Blue Fifth Review, Matter Press, Jellyfish Review, Thrice Fiction, Spelk, Red Fez, and Literary Orphans. Paul curates the monthly F-Bomb Flash Fiction reading series via Zoom. Paul?
Thank you, Karen. I felt better listening to somebody else read that to me. My story was in Bending Genres. It's called Writer's Jeopardy. Alex, out of the hospital with his cancer diagnosis, was standing, holding the IV pole with one hand and maybe questions and answers in the other. I was one of 3 writers and back for my second day as returning champion. My mother was sitting in a chair off to the side with a spotlight on her. She had died of cancer a number of years earlier. Alex began by introducing my mother and asking her what brought her to the show, and she reached down and patted a large bamboo basket with a sign reading, "Gift Basket." He asked her how she thought I did on the earlier show. She unwrapped a stick of blackjack gum, popped it in her mouth, and shrugged her answer back to Alex. Alex read off the headings, and me, being the reigning champion, I got to go first. Alex, I'll take threats for $300. What is, I'll break every bone in your body. Barb buzzed. What did Paul's mother frequently say to him to show extreme displeasure? That was the right answer. And my mother glared at me as the audience applauded. Alex, I'll take threats for $400. Tomas buzzed in. What is, for lying, I'll wash your mouth out with kosher soap. Again, the right answer. And they were coming from the other writers and not from me. Alex, sarcasm for $600, please. If blank's mother lets him jump off the bridge, does that mean I have to let you jump off too? Tomas, lightning fast on the buzzer said, who is Myron? Right again. Tomas, Alex, I'll take guilting for $1,000. Daily double, Tomas. Okay, let's make it a true daily double, Alex. Tomas, this could do it for you. Folks, he's all in for $22,000. What is, I wish I were dead. My mother looked at me with self-satisfied look as the audience applauded. Then the nurses came and escorted Alex out of the studio as the writers went over and talked to my mother, who laughed along with them. My Aunt Libby drove into the stage in a Volkswagen Beetle, and my mother materialized in her sister's passenger seat, and they drove off with my mother lighting up and blowing smoke rings to the applause of the audience. Thank you. Jeff Friedman's next. His 10th book, Ashes in Paradise, will be published by Mad Hat Press in March 2023. His poems and many stories have appeared in American Poetry Review, Poetry International, New England Review, Flash Fiction Funny, Best Microfiction 2021 and 22, and The New Republic. Has received an NEA Literature Translation Fellowship and numerous other awards. Meg Pokris's and Friedman's co-written collection of microfiction, The House of Grana Padamo, was published by Pelicanesis Press in April 2022. Jeff, you're up.
Oh, Jeff's on mute. Jeff, you're on mute. You're muted.
Can you unmute it or you want me to do it?
Can you unmute it?
Yeah. Okay, got it. Sorry, I was going to do a mime presentation. I thought that would go along with our last book, which our next book is going to be titled The Village of Parmesan Cheese. So thanks for hosting the reading, Paul, and thanks to Tanya and Meg and Gary and Mark for doing such a great job on the Best Microfiction series, which I truly love. I'm going to be reading Giver of Gifts, which was published in Body Literature. And I guess the one thing I would say about it is that it was dedicated to many of my Jewish mentors and Jewish poets when I was growing up, who mentored me when I was growing up, who were, I would say, brilliant, but also really crazy. So sort of dedicated to them. Okay, oh, wrong one. So I got mine with me. Giver of Gifts. I gotta get my props ready. Okay. Before the old man went under, he sang one of his miserable songs for which he is famous. He praised onions for their character, ducks for their communal spirit, and carpenter ants for their strong jaws and endurance. So what if they don't win any races? He kissed each of us on the cheek for the last time, he said, his breath stinking of horseradish and garlic. Be kind, he said, which he never was. He praised chicken fat, the four bellies of the cow, the croaking frogs that scared the shit out of Pharaoh, with whom he split lox and bagel at the Carnegie Deli on Wednesdays. He cursed the evil, demented president and all his sycophants. He cursed the Confederate senator blocking every bill, his waddle trembling, the attorney general bloating like a stuffed turkey. He begged us to follow the righteous path and give up vanity. He asked that we light candles for him, repeat his words, tell stories of his life. He asked that his memories become seeds we plant in the wind. He called himself the last Babylonian king, spreading literacy to the masses. He called himself a giver of gift, though he never donated to any causes or even dropped a nickel in a beggar's cup. He praised himself for his journey in the desert, his days running with the hyenas, his devotion to a small bird that died in his hand. Then he closed his eyes and went under. At last, there was no pulse or breath, no preaching, only peace. But in the morning, he began to sing another of his miserable songs. And before he went under again, we had to repeat the whole damn ceremony. Thank you.
Very good, Jeff.
Thank you.
Jeff, are you going to read Scotty's story?
Yes, I am. I'm looking forward to it, actually. So should I take over from here? So.
Sure. Should read Scotty's now? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, great. So Robert has an eye condition that makes it difficult for him to read. So that's why I'm reading his terrific micro triptych, Chickens in the Parlor, which was published originally in Florida Poetry Journal and then appeared in his book of triptychs, Ways to Read the World, which actually came out in 2022, published by Scantic Books. Wonderful book, by the way. Okay. Chickens in the Parlor, which is a triptych in 3 pieces. So the first section, moat in lieu of a welcome mat. When my mother felt her life had become drab and spark smothered, her lipsticks became redder and redder, and she built a moat around the house. Each day, when my father came home from scrubbing graffiti off subway station walls, he'd swim through a clinging storm of mosquitoes to get to the front door with one hand paddling, the other holding his bottle of whiskey above the brine. Old MacDonald. Mother sprinkled feed on the rug for the chickens in the parlor, what she called that tiny room with a convertible sofa in it. The chickens hopped up under the furniture, knocking things over. I was young and didn't mind their ceaseless pecking. My father found a burial plot inside the newspaper and started digging, so he never noticed the new dress Mother was wearing or the candy apple red high heels. This is what you get when you act like old MacDonald, Mother said, sweeping her arm broadly and causing a few chickens to flutter feckless wings. E-I-E-I-O, she said. Last section, steam scream. Mother rid the house of chickens and David learned to cha-cha-cha. It's strange to think how old they seemed then, how young they really were. They were in the kitchen dancing when the teapot started screaming. Father turned, but Mother said, leave it. That she didn't want to stop for a single moment, that those red high heels were out of their coma. She was wearing a flared sundress, and Father had on his gray razor-creased trousers with high cuffs. I found a quarter once in one of those cuffs as they draped over a chair. It was an archaeological high point. Father seemed to like the way that dress bell-shaped as she twirled, and the feel of it, the kettle, not so much. A record skipped on the turntable, was stuck in a brassy, repetitious snippet over and over. Father turned again, sweating at that point. Leave it, Mother said. Thank you. Great story, Robert.
Certainly is. Catherine Culpa. Okay, Catherine has had stories selected for Best Microfiction in the Woodleaf Long List and nominated for Best Small Fictions. She's the author of a flash chapbook, Girls on Film, and has worked in 5 South, Flash Frog, Milk Candy Review, and Pithead Chapel. You're up, Catherine.
Thank you. I actually just found out I have a new chapbook that's going to be coming out from New Rivers Press. I just got that news literally a few minutes before the reading, so I'm excited. And I'm going to read Mother Daughter, which was originally published in Monkey Bicycle. The smell hits first. It always does. Diaper pail ammonia mixed with lion cage, meat and blood and wild. She slams her face against the bars. That's always the worst. Not because they won't hold, they always do, but the heedlessness, the willingness to split a lip, lose a tooth, to be ugly and torn, but free. He steps back, judging the distance to the door. She can't get out, I say. It's one of her bad days. I shouldn't have invited him to dinner. I shouldn't have let him see her, but maybe it's better to give him an excuse to get away. Has she always been, he starts, but doesn't finish. His Adam's apple bobs. She was pretty once, I tell him. I look at the side table, the picture of us in matching daisy dresses she sewed herself. I was 5 then. I didn't know why she locked herself in every full moon. Didn't know why people crossed themselves when they passed our house. It doesn't matter, he says. I still love you. I won't always be pretty, I say. And he says, it doesn't matter at all. And I wonder if that was what my father said before. Was that what male praying mantises told themselves? Or drone bees? He says he'll break the curse. He says he'll save me. He says he has a silver bullet blessed by the priest. And I say, no, don't hurt her. And then I see the rifle pointed at me. I'm so sorry, he says. And then there's a roar I feel in my feet, the screech of metal and sheetrock crumbling in a rain of plaster dust. And I was wrong about those bars. And when I can see again, she's licking the blood off her ghost-coated arm. And thank you, I say. And she looks up, and I can't tell if she hears or understands, but I think she knows me, even though she just keeps licking her arm, because it's one of her bad days.
Terrific. Well, that brings us to the end of the people who showed up. So, Meg, how do you want to handle this?
Well, it's your series, so I'm not actually sure. Yeah, I just figure so many great microfiction readers are here tonight. You know, maybe handle it like an open mic. I don't know.
So, okay, why don't, if you'd like to pick a story from the book and read.
Oh.
No?
Oh, well, I wouldn't know. Honestly, maybe that isn't such a good idea because I wouldn't really know who's to. I think it wouldn't be really fair just to pick one and not all the others. So I think that would be weird, maybe. You know, I can't really decide. How could I decide out of all those stories? But anyway, I think we could just have people read because people are, like I said, so many great writers are here tonight, and micro writers actually, you know, have people read a story. How does that sound? You know, their own story, a new story. We could say a new story within the last, you know, 2 years or so, or a year. How does that sound, Paul?
It sounds fine. I don't know if they're prepared for it, but we'll give it a try.
They're not. I know I wasn't prepared either to read a micro, but people can probably get. Okay, how about this? Should we ask who can do it, who wants to read, and see who reacts? Like, great, Nancy, and Iris, and Bill, and okay, I can't see everybody for some reason.
Loretta,
we're talking about people
Willa,
who haven't read.
Nancy.
Yeah.
And Jeff raised his hand again, I believe.
What was that again?
Did you raise your hand again?
I don't know. I'm tentative. I was trying to figure out if you're asking all of us if we want to read, or just the people who haven't read.
No, it could be. What do you think, Paul? I think
we have the time, and
okay, we have
the
time for everybody. Yeah, Jeff, you can read again, and
okay, I'll read something. I'll read one of Robert's too.
So how many? Sorry,
Robert Van Motel. Okay.
Oh, great. Yeah, Madeline and
Scott. I'm going to read one for Scotty too.
Oh, cool. Another one for Scotty. That's great.
That's going to be the name of my story. Another story for Scotty.
Perfect symmetry. Mickey, are you there?
I am. If I didn't have that pimple.
But you can read with your
no
camera.
another time.
Do you have a piece about a pimple, maybe?
We want to see
You could write a piece right now about a pimple.
Next time.
Dang. Okay.
Yeah, I'm getting over a bivalent booster experience. So.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot about that. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad you got the booster.
Oh yeah, me too.
Okay, so we'll just go down the list of the people that raised their hand.
Okay.
Is that okay? No intro except the name. Madeline.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Good to be here.
Yes.
This is Art. I congratulate an acquaintance at a Soho gallery on his sale of a Basquiat. Father interrupts me, whispers from his grave. How could you, daughter? Don't you remember? I remember how he'd come home scribbled down to a nub, railing against paint spray vandals. How can they call that art? Kids have thrown all over the city trains. 40 years it took him to get from scrubbing train terminals to department boss. Then the bigwigs demoted him. Couldn't find the perfect paint remover for train and trestle explosions of color. Mocked by every kid with a can, too tired to stop mother's tirades. First, he suffered a stroke, last, a heart attack. As the monitor pulsed to a stop, his hospital room filled with the light of firecrackers he'd set free as a boy on Hester Street.
Hey, and I'm going to clarify something. Karen, is that your hand up to read?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Right,
great.
there you are. Catherine's got her hand up.
Catherine Silver Aho, is that right?
Hajo.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you were here.
Hi, Meg.
Hi.
You're up.
Can I actually ask a quick question? Is this should these just be fiction? No CNF, I'm assuming.
If it's microfiction, as far as
If
I'm
it's
concerned,
under 400 words, anything goes. Yeah.
you're up.
Oh, me? Oh, sorry. Okay. All right, so I'm going to read. This is CNF, and it's Migraine, and it was published in Atticus Review. It thrashes its tail, head ducking and rearing, a Chinese dragon of electric colors, scintillating in your skull, yellow and blue fangs snapping, twisting, writhing across your vision, prying you from work, from words, the world, pressing down until you're a curled ball, the normally sleek superhighway of neurons, axons, synapses, of nerve impulses that hurtle around your brain, having cracked like a bridge in an earthquake. When the dragon snarls surrender, you do. 2, the beast, mythic or not, is riding my optic nerve. It bends a long curved claw around my field of vision, drags a bioluminescent trail around my line of sight, snaps its fiery tail across my pupil in an opposing direction, complicating the effect. Neon blue and saffron zigzag boldly where they don't belong, overtaking a secret space in my head that should be mine alone. I consider grabbing the brute by its flailing whiptail, but in my confused state, I am clearly no match. 3, how would the ancients have explained centipede-like hallucinations skittering across the eyes in psychedelic colors? Possession, insanity? Picture the migraine sufferer of yore in the throes of the searing pain that follows that wild prodrome, like a caveman in a lightning storm. Perhaps the poor wretch believed a vengeful God was striking him mercilessly while he huddled, brain a confused scramble of thoughts and images, convinced he'd lost his mind. Limp as seagrass, he'd have been at a loss to explain those beautiful, terrifying visions. 4, curse the migraine gods, those drama queens. They hate it when you're too absorbed in your work to notice them. That's when they usually stage an epic performance on a split screen for one eye only. Naturally, you don't need to buy tickets for admission. Nope, this event is choreographed just for you, requires you to sit back, close your eyes, take it in. And once in, there's no excusing yourself to use the restroom or grab a bag of popcorn. Once you fumble for and find your little pillbox, hoping to avoid the much hyped post-performance event, it's easy to forget that your brain is not truly your own, that when you least expect it, the migraine gods will return, and you'd best be ready with the backstage pass that gets you out of the party.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Karen?
This is called Prey, P-R-E-Y. When I was 7, I was accidentally poisoned when our housekeeper, left cleaning fluid in a drinking cup on the counter. I was in the hospital for a week and shared a room with another little girl who was there for a chronic stomach ailment. She spooked me. She convinced me that we were both left there by our parents to die. We used to get up in the middle of the night and go to the window, looking up at the sky and the stars and pray. At some point, I was released, but I think she never left. That's it.
Thank you, Karen. Anybody else? Jeff?
Okay, I'm reading one for Scotty too. So is that okay? Both in a row?
Take one for Scotty.
Okay, so I'll do one. I'm going to do his first this time. This is a piece I really love. Well, I love a lot of his pieces, but anyway, it comes from what we know so far. It's called Interpreter of Dreams. And I'll just say that he said that it was one of the more autobiographical pieces. Interpreter of Dreams. My mother was a self-appointed interpreter of dreams, coughing out her verdicts with an early morning smoke, mining her slumber for forecasts. Silverware meant guests were coming, hands a gift. Bees represented bad luck, especially if they were swarming, and teeth, the one we dreaded most, meant certain death. And it didn't matter whose, a family member, a neighbor, even old movie stars counted, were not safe. And we'd wait for the axe to fall. And of course it always did. And she'd say, see? The Rosetta Stone she carried in her head, infallible back then. As we listened, our spoons frozen over cold bowls of cereal, she in her robe with her coffee and her cigarettes, and the fate of the world in her hands. I'm going to read, I hope this is okay. I'm going to read, it's sort of a prose poem really, but it's also a micro. It's a micro prose poem. How's that? Or it's a prose poem that's a micro. Is that legal or?
You bet. Throw the rules out the window today.
Okay, so it's like a Venn diagram. Well, anyway, okay. This is, I just felt like reading it because this friend of mine, well, I'm not gonna go in the story, but during Hurricane Irene, a close friend of mine who was a sculptor, had her place totally flooded and all her works were flooded. And we spent a lot of time over there pulling out stuff out of the walls and trying to help her and put back her place together and just tearing things apart because everything had to be destroyed. And the thing, the river, the White River, she lives in West Hartford, and the White River rose. That's what caused it. It was a flash flood in the area as a result of the hurricane. So I'm going to read this piece. Mud. The mud was just, it was so, when the river comes up out like that, like mud's just deposited all over, just all over everything. And that was one of the key impressions I had. So I wrote a poem called Mud. All right. Out of the river, mud climbed broken embankments, crooked staircases, gleaming hulls, the corpses of cows, the skulls of cars. Out of the river, mud entered our homes, roasted its dinner in our ovens, filled our glasses with gritty wine. At night, it made our beds, tucking sheets and spreading covers. Mud said its prayers and wept for us. It ticked in our clocks. It wore our shoes and socks, plastered our ankles. Mud took over banks, gas stations, the mayor's office. Mud baked our bread. It spoke 1,000 tongues, translated our deepest needs into simple sentences. It filled out our forms, smudging the signature line. When mud wavered, even for a moment, it kneeled in soggy churches, renewed its faith. With its conscience clear, mud mixed its own cocktail and went out to spread the word, its logic impossible to rebut. Mud drove a convoy of trucks, unloading cargoes of itself. Mud dammed the flood. It hired us to work, raking mounds of it into gardens and carrying it in pails. When we looked up, even the sun was mud.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else? Roy. Or are you going to have to, there you go.
You ready for me? All right, this is kind of a flash piece since we're throwing out the rules. And while most of us think of the little people that populated the earth were mostly in the Western European woods that were thousands of years old, somehow some have strayed into southwestern US. This one's called It's a Dry Heat. Humans may live for as many as 100 years, but not many more years than that. Other beings of a type not to be named here may live forever. Is that fair? No one has ever said life was fair. In fact, the opposite is often said to be true. Robert Morrison woke up with the scratchiest throat he could remember ever having. He tried a tentative swallow and found he had nothing to swallow. He was spitless. His eyes also felt grainy. Opening and closing them felt like the lids were lined with sandpaper. He was in a depression of hard-packed sand that was still warm, though the air was starting to cool. There were a million stars overhead, and if he didn't feel like he'd been run through the ringer a dozen times, he could have enjoyed the display. He watched as every 15 to 20 seconds a shooting star raced across the sky. He tried to see where they started and where they ended, but was always a little too late. Just got the middle part. For a reason he couldn't figure, this bothered him. A full moon had just begun to start up the sky on the horizon. Was he maybe in the desert? He lay on his back and tried to remember what could have possibly brought him to someplace in the desert. Ah, that cute woman in the bar with the dark hair and blue eyes, he thought to himself. Her boyfriend had gotten drunk with his cowboy buddies, and she was hitting on me to get his attention. I knew what she was doing, and I let it happen. He felt no pain and figured they must have just knocked him out and dumped him here. But how far was here from there? It would probably be better to try and walk to civilization at night while it was still cool. Maybe he could get to the highway. Robert tried to sit up and found he couldn't. He did manage to roll over onto his stomach and bring himself to his hands and knees. Panting from exertion, he paused and looked down at his hands. With the bright moonlight, he noticed his shirt sleeves were tattered and faded on one side, like from the sun. How long could he have been here? Still on his hands and knees, he surveyed the area around the roughly circular 25-foot depression. With the help of the moonlight, he could see the area about 8 to 10 feet out from the worn lip of that depression. I must be in some kind of dried up water hole, he whispered through dry lips. Surrounding the water hole were the skeletons of all sorts of desert life. What looked to be dried desert rats and mice, armadillos, birds, and maybe rabbits were joined by a number of scorpions. Robert had been on his hands and knees for a couple of minutes when his left femur broke away from his hip and he collapsed onto his stomach again. There was no pain. Why wasn't there any pain? He thought back to his awakening and realized that with his dry throat and scratchy eyelids, there hadn't been any pain either. Just the sensation of what? He looked at his right hand. In the darkness, he couldn't see a lot of detail. With his left hand, he tested the strength of his ring finger. He bent it back and forth as far as it would go, and then it broke off. That can't be good, he said, whispering again. The finger he'd broken off was mainly skin and bone, with a small amount of dried flesh wrapped around that bone. Robert was curious as to whether his body was that dry, but not curious enough to continue experimenting. Still lying on his stomach, he knew he was never going to walk out of the desert. 2 pairs of growing red eyes had been watching Robert from a distance of about 30 feet. He's finally finished, a voice murmured from near one pair of those eyes. Yes, Alphonse, said another voice. He dried quite nicely. 20 years is a long time to wait, Edgar, said the first voice. It's like letting a fine wine age, answered the second. The powder derived from this gifts, body, will provide us with a life-giving essence for centuries to come. The job of keeping him just alive has been difficult, but well worth the effort. Come on, I'll bring the urns. Let's get this done and get back home. Oh, what a welcome we'll receive. Robert watched as two old men walked up to him. They looked like garden gnomes. I could use some help here, he said. I don't think I can get out of the desert by myself. The men hunkered down in squatting positions in front of Robert, setting two golden urns to the side. You are a very valuable commodity, one said, and we will take very special care that all of you gets out of the desert. The second of the two picked up the finger that Robert had cast aside. He rolled it around in his palms, being careful not to lose any of the dust he was making. He transferred all of the Robert dust to one palm and gently snorted a small amount. He let out a sigh. Exquisite, he said, offering his palm to his comrade. The elixir added to the pond's water was just the correct amount. Of course it was the correct amount, Alphonse. I prepared it and added it to the pond myself. Testy, testy. I said it was correct, didn't I? Robert grimaced as one of his arms was pulled from his body. Based on the conversation he was listening to, but not a part of, he came to realize he may be the ingredient in some sort of recipe. A recipe for life, but not his life. Alphonse addressed Robert once more as he carefully broke off a leg at one of the knees and pulled it from the pants leg. Your life essence has been enhanced by the process. Your DNA will course through our families for a very long time. We thank you for that. As Edgar was wrenching Walter's head from his neck, Walter thought about the Huntington's disease that had killed his father and his father's father before him. What do you suppose he's smiling about? Asked Alphonse. Who knows what humans consider humorous? Answered Edgar, pulling the head free. I've always thought them odd. That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
I think Nancy wants to read something still.
Yeah, and Nancy and Luella Lester.
And Iris.
And Iris, yeah.
Thank you. So this is my collection, my first collection about to come out. It's called Collateral Damage, 48 Stories. And this micro I'm gonna read was published in Ekphrastic Review. And it was actually paired with a David Hockney called Pool with Two Figures. The story began long ago and got shorter and shorter and shorter, but then Loretta paired it with that brilliantly. He paired it with that painting. At the pool party for my niece's graduation from middle school. I'm a goner. Even before Leah, my brother's new colleague, tells me her psychiatric specialty, evaluating sexually dangerous people. And when she reappears, resplendent in a golden brown one piece, I drown in desire. While Leah swims laps, I descend the ladder at the deep end, figuring I can hang on to the side, faking it, never letting on I can't swim. My eyes on the prize, Leah. Marissa, my niece's best friend, swims up and asks if she can practice life-saving on me. Leah is watching us, and I'm figuring kindness to children is always a plus. But Marissa loses her grip, and then I'm grabbing desperately at her orange bikini top, and she's yelling. By the time I reached the metal ladder, my coughing subsided, my snotty nose wiped clean. Everyone has gone inside for cake. A dead bug floats on the surface, and I wonder who will save me now.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Iris, you're up. But only if you unmute.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm having some vision problems, so David will be reading 2 very, very short macros. Thank you.
Okay, this one is called Ruby's Shoes. Slanted rain pelts Ruby's black patent leather Mary Janes. She must propel herself into the dark limousine quickly. Then from limo to faraway funeral parlor. Outsized downpour. Now to the cemetery. Queens, soil soaked. Back to Brooklyn, still teeming. Out the limousine door, up 15 steps to her home. Storming. Ruby's dress shoes, never the same. And this one is called, oh, thank you. This one is called In Woods. Lone. In sheltering thicket, separated from pack, it raises head and howls. Pricks up ears. Pups, mate, leader, none. From brook to shrub, twig to stone, leaf to cloud, the consensus alone. It sniffs, remembers playful romps of youth. The wolf continues its search. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that I missed?
Luella Lester.
Luella.
Hi. You know what? I have two little 100-piece stories that were out in Ink, Sweat, and Tears just yesterday. So I'll just read those. One is titled Waiting at the Coffee and Suds. He tumbles onto the chair next to her, thighs suspended and gray as his hair, sweatpants wrinkled down to the elastic cinching his chicken ankles. Sniff. She pokes her nose into her cup. He blows his nose into a cloth hanky, jams it into his pocket, snort. She regrets wearing her hearing aid. He spills out his arms, spreads his hand alongside her cup. Shuffle. She doesn't look up. He speaks in gurgles. You have no ring, honey, widowed or divorced. He puffs up his basket chest. Spin. She turns and leaves. He crumples to a pile on the floor. And the second one is called Marking Your Territory. It was a pack I'd never seen in my neighborhood before, a panting bulldog and a big-eyed mutt with a handsome guy in tow. We were all waiting to cross the street, them on one corner, me on the other, when the guy, standing sway back with his left hand hooked on his pocket, looked over at me and sniffed. It was only polite to sniff back. The light changed and we all crossed. Then we went our separate ways. But I knew I'd be out that night, leaving my scent up and down the street, howling into the dark. Thanks.
Thank you, Luella. Meg, I'd like to thank you for putting this concept to good use. And
thank you so much, Paul. This was so wonderful of you to have us and to host us, and thank you. It was a wonderful, delightful reading. I'm glad almost everybody got to read. That was even more special.
It was a good night. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Don't forget to tip your.
Wait. Oh, Bill. Okay,
Bill
sorry.
Is it a hand raised?
Bill, were you going to read? Or?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry, I got that wrong. Okay.
No, we're good.
Okay. Okay. Great to see you. Okay, bye.
Everybody.
You too.
Wonderful reading. Thank you, Paul and Meg.
Thank
you. All right, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Bye, Iris. Bye,
Thanks,
David.
Paul.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody. It
you,
was great reading.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Scotty, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, now should we start the reading? No. The late night reading? Thanks, Paul.
Reading, yes.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Catherine. That was great reading of your pieces. And Scotty, love to read your work. It just flows for me.
Yep.
See you all later.
Good night, all.